Boogerman overflowed out of a filthy gas station toilet and onto your Sega Genesis back in 1994. Developed and published by Interplay, Boogerman was yet another entry into the seemingly endless platform mascot genre that had been in full effect since the late 80s. Knowing this, Interplay decided to make Boogerman stand out from the crowd by giving him the gimmick of being super gross, if you hadn't already figured that out from a game called Boogerman. And you may be asking yourself, just why would anyone want to make that a selling point? Well, keep in mind that this was back in a time when being over-the-top gross was the high point of kids' entertainment, with the likes of Ren and Stimpy regularly making parents wish that they could put their kids up for adoption every time it came on TV. So with kids' TV infested with exploding eyeballs and jokes centered around pus, enter Boogerman to try his hand at cornering the console gross-out market with attacks centered around bodily function and his constant exclamation of "Booger!" as his catchphrase that no doubt sent kids everywhere under 10 into cardiac arrest due to the sheer hilarity of it all. But despite the whole fart and booger-laden gimmicks, did Boogerman actually somehow have a fun game underneath it all? Or was this the 786,000th platform mascot game to hit the Kmart clearance bin in less than a month? Well, strap your favorite underwear around your head and maybe try not to let anyone see you do that, since they might actually institutionalize you, because we're about to see if Boogerman stinks as much as it wants you to think it does. Once you're done asking yourself what you've done with your life up to this point to be playing a game called Boogerman, then it's time to play Boogerman. Get into the game and you're met with Boogerman himself, who essentially looks like a combination of someone from the People of Walmart website and a superhero that's put in the least amount of effort into being a superhero. Essentially, Boogerman is here because of some sort of science experiment gone wrong, when all of the world's trash is being sent to a separate dimension or something. Everyone's favorite gross janitor accidentally stumbles into this one night and sets off to see who or what could be behind things in this weird trash world. And that's where you take control of Boogerman, with his incredible superpowers consisting of tossing boogers, belching, and of course farting to take down anything in his way. A trio of superpowers that, while disgusting, are sadly far more relatable than other superheroes out there right now, at least to me anyway. Making your way around Boogerman should be familiar to anyone that's ever played a platform game in their life, as Boogerman runs, jumps, and climbs his way through 20 levels filled with enemies based on, you guessed it, disgusting bodily functions, like nose goblins and exploding pus monsters. Though I actually ended up finding this disturbing tree face that keeps repeating in the first few levels to be by far the most disgusting thing in the game. It just kind of haunts my dreams now. Most of the stages are fairly straightforward, with you just needing to get to the end of the stage to progress, so don't expect any puzzle solving or junk like that, because it should be pretty obvious that Boogerman probably wouldn't excel at such a thing. Some of the stages can be a bit long though, and with Boogerman only able to take 2 hits before he melts away, you'll need to quickly become a master in the art of digestive kung fu. The belch and fart attacks can be powered up to take down larger enemies and barriers throughout the stage, though neither of these attacks are much better than just flinging your boogers everywhere. Especially the fart attack, since you actually have to turn Boogerman around to aim his ass at things. God, I can't believe I'm actually saying any of this. Unfortunately, you can't just go around belching and farting as much as you want though, as you have a limited supply of both snot and gas, so keep an eye out for refills on both throughout the stages, or you'll just be stuck trying to jump on top of enemies, which isn't exactly ideal or anywhere near as hilarious. At the end of every world, you get treated to a boss to take down, all of which rely on the exact same attack pattern of throwing something at you, jumping across the screen, and then repeating. Most are at least fairly creative and live up to their disgusting worlds, like Flyboy, who pukes maggots and acid at you from across the screen. Some of the bosses can be a bit tricky, since some of their attacks give you almost zero time to react, but with a little memorization and infinite continues, you should be able to take them down after a few tries. Besides the bosses, Boogerman isn't exactly overly challenging if you take your time, though the game definitely loves to place enemies in some pretty cheap spots at times, along with Boogerman just overall having a weird hit detection, which can cause you to take a hit when you thought you weren't even being touched. Especially with smaller enemies like these bouncing things that'll just torment you constantly throughout the game, since they're both incredibly hard to hit with your boogers, and jumping on them is a complete gamble if you'll take a hit or not. As mentioned, with 20 levels to beat, there's a good amount of game to play through here. It's just a matter of how much Boogerman and his constant voice clips you can stand before you realize you've had enough. When Boogerman hit store shelves, it came toward the tail end of a landslide of platform mascot games that had pretty much flooded every console on the market at the time. So in my case at least, I had grown pretty tired and cynical of any mascot game that didn't have Mario or Sonic plastered on the front of it, simply because most of these games by this point were cheap, fast cash-ins to get dumb kids like me to spend money on them and then instantly regret it. And upon seeing a game called Boogerman on the store shelf, my 12-year-old eyes nearly rolled out of my head, since this just looked like the cheapest of cash-ins on the whole being gross fad that was popular with kids at the time. So when we got multiple requests to cover this game on the channel, I can't say I was too excited to do it. But after playing the game and actually giving it a fair shot, I can't say I hated it. No, it's not gonna win any awards of any sort, but I was actually surprised at just how likable Boogerman as a game and not as a character is. Even if you're not into the whole gross out thing, there's a lot to enjoy here, not the least of which is the game's incredible animation that really gives Boogerman a cartoon-like vibe in the same vein as something like Earthworm Jim. Now, I'm not going to put Boogerman on the same level as Shiny's masterpiece, and it definitely has its fair share of problems, but Boogerman is at least a solid game that I could actually recommend to someone without being too embarrassed by it. So if you're like me and maybe never gave this Boogerman guy the time of day since it looked like it came straight out of a focus group aimed at 6-year-old kids that like fart noises, then maybe toss this one in your Genesis if you ever get the chance, instead of the toilet.